to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your fantasy football home, over at fakepigskin.com. Getting you ready for fantasy football week 6. Damian Dabrowski is here to join me. And Damian, this is crazy. We're already talking about week 6. October is just insane. Like I was watching Pens Caps, so that was good. Penguins are winning again, of course, because death, taxes, and the Penguins beating the Capitals, so that's always good. Baseball playoffs are in full effect. Didi Gregorius has apparently turned into Barry Bonds, and everything is going out of the stadium. The Cubs lost, but somehow magically John Lester threw somebody out at first. A guy that can't throw to first base threw somebody out at first. My mind is blown. I'm not really sure what to do. How's everything on your end, and what's up?
Yeah, I mean, it's bizarro world. Everything's happening. I mean, it's funny you say, death, taxes, and the Penguins winning. Last I looked, didn't they lose 10-1? I think I saw that the other day.
Over the Capitals. Yeah, I don't know what happened against the Blackhawks. That was
weird. I thought that was a baseball score I was looking at, but then I was like, well, the Pirates are already out, so a little strange, but what a time. We'll overlook that. It's first week of the season. We got Didi Gregorius already went deep twice off Kluber here, so thought the Yankees were dead. Thought it was going to be a sweep. Now they might be moving on. Hopefully not.
What is it about the Yankees that they can just destroy Kluber? They did it in game 1. They're doing it again tonight.
Yeah, I think they just Cleveland was such a heavy favorite in that series that I just think the Yankees pretty much had nothing to lose. Which I think took a little bit of the pressure off in terms that everybody expected Kluber to basically dominate them. So I'm sure they were a little bit more relaxed. And it's paying off. It would help if we'd stop calling catcher's interference every time Jacoby Ellsbury steps to the plate. I mean, I think at some point it's on him and not the catcher. If everybody else manages to swing the bat without hitting the catcher and he somehow can't do it. So interesting.
And we got Joel Embiid out here just putting a clinic on your nets. He's just doing everything he needs to do. Step backs. He's got the dirt going. He's got the Hakeem going.
Basket. Yeah, I can't believe he hasn't gotten hurt yet. I mean, my over-under was 7 minutes, and somehow he's still in there. So
it's that new contract, man. That new contract.
We'll see when the details of it come out, though, because I saw some clips. It's basically he could get $150 million or he could just get 0.
Yeah, so he's basically either going to be Greg Oden or Stephen Curry. We'll see. We'll see which one pops out. So we have a lot to get into tonight. We have some injury news, obviously. We have a trade, which we'll get to here in a second, and we can calm everybody down with their hot take cannon. We'll obviously get you ready for week 6. We'll give you starts. We'll give you stats. We'll go position by position like we do each and every Wednesday. But Damian Dabrowski, Adrian Peterson is a Arizona Cardinal. The 2012 Arizona Cardinals are primed for a Super Bowl run.
Or not. I mean,
it's 2017 and Adrian Peterson is washed.
Yeah, I think that's had the headline. After the trade went down, it just said Adrian Peterson will now average 2.8 yards per carry for a new team. So that's honestly, I think, the best way you can put it. I mean, we can get into kind of the different ramifications of this. I guess we have to assume he's going to at least get more work than he was getting in New Orleans, just because, Mark Ingram and Kamara are actually good, so it makes sense for them to be involved, whereas the poo-poo platter of Arizona running backs is, something that maybe would have been useful in 2009, not in 2017.
Well, Chris Johnson's out of there now, so they had to replace him with another old back. And yeah, I mean, I guess what's your biggest takeaway? Who gets the biggest boost from this move? Is it Ingram for you? Is it Kamara? Is it Andre Ellington? Because Peterson's going to run in the line and fall down twice, and then Ellington's going to catch the ball. What's your biggest takeaway?
I definitely think Ingram's the biggest mover just in terms of workload, just because I think he's far and away the most talented player. Kind of, if you look at everybody involved on either team, kind of as a result of this move here, if you just give him an extra 5 to 7 carries each game, it doesn't sound like much, but going from 13 carries to 20 carries is a big difference. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of I think the biggest takeaway. I think, it obviously helps Kamara too, but we saw that even, in that last game, um, against the Dolphins when Peterson was still there, he was still active. We saw him catch 10 passes. So I think he was going to be able to kind of do this whether Peterson stayed or went. Maybe he gets an extra 2 or 3 carries a week, but I don't think he's going to be a guy that's going to be seeing, a little bit like Chris Thompson. I don't think he's going to be a guy that's ever going to be seeing, or maybe not ever, but at least this year with Ingram still there, he's not going to be a guy that's going to be getting, 10, 12 carries. It'll be 5 or 6 carries and, 5 or 6 catches. So Ingram's definitely kind of the biggest benefactor here. In terms of Arizona, none of those guys were really, with the exception of Ellington and PPR, and I think that's not going to change at all. Peterson's not going to catch any passes. He's just going to take the carries that they were basically distributing to, Kerwin and Chris Johnson and everybody there. So those guys weren't relevant to begin with. So I don't necessarily think Peterson will be either. He's probably worth a pickup, in your standard 12-team league just because – he'll get more touches on the ground than any of those guys, but that offensive line stinks. And this is a team that's and they're throwing like 55 times a game, so it's not like this isn't 2007 Adrian Peterson. It's not like they're getting him and all of a sudden they're a power running team. It's just they really have nothing to lose, trying to kind of get this going, seeing what their expectations were going into the season and trying to salvage it a little bit now.
Yeah, who's your favorite plotting running back, Latavius Murray or Adrian Peterson?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I can also give you Rashad Jennings if you'd like to take him too.
Man, I don't know. I'll probably take Peterson, just because I think McKinnon's a lot better than anybody that Arizona currently has. So he'll be bad, but everybody's bad. Whereas Latavius might just start getting phased out a little bit here if McKinnon can hold up. So yeah, that's where I'm leaning.
The one thing I will say about Ingram, Graham Barfield tweeted out some awesome stuff earlier, but Ingram's targets have gone 5, 5, 4, and then 8 last week, so he's getting a lot more of the looks in the passing game. He's going to get a ton of carries. Even if he's not getting all the carries, he should still see 50, 60, 70% of the carries, and that's something that I was really excited about, and what's made him a top 10, top 15 back, the past 2 seasons. So there's a lot to like. I think it makes a ton of sense for Ingram. I think it opens up a little more touches for Kamara, who's been, exploring and excelling out of this backfield. I think they'll keep finding unique ways to get him the ball. But I think Ingram's your guy. I think Ellington's still the guy in Arizona I want to own, especially in PPR. Now, my biggest question to you, Damian, is, I guess, does this trade signify anything in terms of David Johnson for you? Do you have a little more concern that maybe he's not going to be back? And, the way this season's kind of going in general, the Cardinals have no rush to get him back on the field. So if you're holding David Johnson in, 12-team leagues and 10-team leagues in hopes that he could come back unless you have an IR spot, is he a guy that, with all the bye weeks coming hard and fast and all these, interesting running backs popping up on the waiver wire, is he a guy you're comfortable dropping and taking a shot on somebody else?
Well, I don't think that this news per se has any meaning, I guess, for the return of David Johnson, just because he's still so far away from when we expected him to be back that it's not as if, I don't think his timeline could have been delayed this early in the process, because he's just not close enough to returning for them to know if there's been a setback or anything.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think it almost signifies the opposite. I think that, the Cardinals, we'll see what draft pick they ended up giving up for this, but, there was a lot of talk that Peterson might just be cut straight up. There's really that nobody was willing to give up any type of asset for him. So I think the fact that the Cardinals actually gave up something for him implies that they're trying to remain competitive here, with the hopes that maybe, if they're still in it and they get Johnson back, they'll be able to make a push for the wild card there. Because if they were just willing to tank the season, there'd be no point in trading a draft pick for Peterson, because it's obviously just a stopgap, a couple week solution, hopefully, not something that's going to make him any better going forward, obviously. So I actually think this bodes well for Johnson returning if you're really reading into it, but maybe that's a stretch too. I just really don't think it has any impact. Given, that we're still, over a month away from when we kind of expected him to be back.
Yeah, I'm hoping to see him around Thanksgiving, but who knows? Still holding him in a couple leagues. including the listener league where I am currently 5-0 despite losing David Johnson
Oh
and
God,
Dalvin Cook.
let's not talk about that. My team in that league is an absolute disaster. I
My
don't
team is
think
so good.
well, to be honest, I feel like I kind of set that when we had that pod where we went over it, right?
Mm,
I mean, the first two receivers I drafted, I think, were Allen Robinson and Brandon Marshall, both
yeah,
currently out for the year. So yeah, especially when that's a fairly deep league in the sense that we have three receivers and two flexes, so
yeah.
a little tough to come back from that. But it's okay. Fortunately, that's far and away my worst league this year, so
It's all good.
can't complain.
I'm holding it down for the show. Don't worry, I'm good. There's a lot of injury news, a lot of stuff we want to get into before we hit those start sits. Let's talk about the Packers running game situation. Ty Montgomery was a full participant in practice today, but Aaron Jones is awesome. He looked great on Sunday. Me and Ron obviously talked about that on our Monday show. ESPN's Packers reporter Rob Domofsky thinks Jones could be the starter, even if Montgomery comes back. So, Damian, if you own Aaron Jones, if you own Ty Montgomery, they're both active for Sunday's game. What are you doing with them? Are they both in flex consideration? I mean, just help our listeners out. Like, what do we do if we own one or both?
I That's probably the most accurate way to say is that they're both flexes. I guess I wouldn't be surprised. I'd almost be leaning that I think Montgomery's going to miss another week, just because it's tough to go from what was essentially said to be a 2 to 4 week injury to being back in 2 weeks, especially given the fact how well Jones played. And it's clear that the Packers can run an effective offense without Montgomery at least for a couple of weeks here. So I guess my concern is that I don't think it never really made sense in terms of converting Montgomery to a full-time running back. I guess when it happened last year, just given the injuries and everything, it was kind of something that was done out of necessity. But if the Packers really believed in it, they wouldn't have drafted two running backs in the first 5 rounds this year. So clearly they were looking to kind of upgrade that position. And it just we still the games where Montgomery was getting 18, 20 carries were few and far between. It was more of kind of just the receiving weapon he was, and there were some pieces being where he still he just doesn't take hits the way a running back takes hits, given kind of that he's been playing receiver for the majority of his career, and that he just wasn't going to be able to hold up. And I think the Packers would prefer to use him in more of a limited role than that, and have him for the duration of the season. Just because of the mismatch problems he presents. So, I don't think Aaron Jones is all of a sudden a 20-touch guy either once Montgomery is back, but it wouldn't surprise me if he got more carries from this point on, for the rest of the season than Montgomery did.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's really going to be something where you're going to need to pay attention to practice reports, and we'll try and get information out to you through our Twitter account. So at FPAOP on Twitter, make sure you're following us. We'll get you anything we find on the situation. But I'm kind of with you in that I think Montgomery will practice a little bit this week. They'll say, oh, he's not quite ready. He'll sit out this week. Aaron Jones will be the guy against Minnesota. And then going forward, I honestly think it'll be a lot of hot hand. I think it'll be a lot of basically Aaron Jones will be your first and second down thumper, and Montgomery will be the passing down guy. But with Devontae Adams looking really good, Jordy Nelson, obviously he has a little bit of a hamstring issue, but he's supposed to be fine. We'll get to him here in a second. Just the barrage of weapons, Randall Cobb, Martellus Bennett. It's just if he kind of becomes more of a passing down guy, like his potential output is just is severely limited. I don't know. It's gonna be a guy that's gonna be hard to play unless you have PPR league, and then obviously if he can get 5, 6, 7 catches a game, sure. But even then the volume might be a little bit hard to get. So pay attention to the Twitter. We'll see what we can do. My guess is Aaron Jones plays this week, and we'll figure it out going forward. Tyler Eifert. Ben tried to warn us. We made some videos in the preseason. He said, don't draft Tyler Eifert. All he does is get hurt. He got hurt. He's having season-ending back surgery. He's out 4 to 6 months. I mean, in redraft leagues, he's definitely not a guy you want to hold on to. Um, for you dynasty folks, he's becoming even harder to hold on to. If you know somebody in your league who's still in love with him and will pay you, any sort of return, I think it's something I would explore. But it's not great news.
I don't know how you get hurt when you're never on the field, but somehow Eifert manages to do it pretty regularly. So, it's unfortunate. I don't think it's surprising, obviously, given his injury history. It's kind of they're volatile for different reasons, but it's kind of why, with the exception of Gronk and Kelsey maybe. Tight end's just a tough position to kind of invest a lot of your draft capital in.
This is what I was talking to Ron about, and I think I'm going to try and push it in a lot of my leagues next year. Is instead of having a tight end position, I'm just going to have an extra flex position. So if you want to play Kelsey or Gronk or somebody there, you can, but you don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess
it's like catchers; they're annoying.
Yeah, but I think the challenge they present.
I know you love those random Tuesdays in August when Jet Bandy is getting a catching start, and you use him in your 2-catcher league, and and he gets you a home run. You're like so excited, but it's just.
I was streaming catchers for like 2 straight weeks, and they were literally homering every other day.
I know.
It was amazing, but I don't think we should be trying to make like fantasy football easier for people. I think if anything, we should be making it more challenging. That's kind of I want
start 2 tight ends a week, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm fine if you want to make. I'd almost go the other way, kind of how the Fishbowl does it, or I know the Stopa League does it too. You just because tight ends stink, you make their scoring even higher. You get more points for tight ends that do well. Eliminating them because then you're just basically, it's like, well, why don't we just start 3 players? It's like, you want to have that volatility in there because it rewards, kind of, the additional research you're going to do and try to kind of look into matchups, look into who's getting targets, things like that. But whatever, it depends on your league. Kind of treat it how you will.
Hey, as long as I can start Aaron Rodgers as one of those 3 players, I'll be really, really excited.
Yeah. Well, that's what you play on draft.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll get to our friends over at Draft. Let's talk about Rob Kelly, a guy I was really excited about. Obviously, the Redskins are at home versus the 49ers. But now they're saying it's a long shot for him to play. He's still dealing with injuries from before the bye week. Incredibly frustrating. Samaje Perine is supposed to get the majority of the touches. People seem kind of mixed on him. I think he's got talent, but I haven't really seen a lot of it at the NFL level. Are you comfortable using him, with the bye weeks and the amount of injuries at the position?
No, he's just bad. Or he's been bad. I don't want to, make a generalization about the guy's career, 4 games into his rookie season. But, you're talking about who's your favorite plotting running back. I mean, this guy's been 2 yards in a cloud of dust pretty much, since day one. I just, give Chris Thompson more touches. Let Kirk Cousins throw it 50 times. I don't understand what they're going to gain, handing it off to Pierre because they've been giving him a pretty heavy workload, which, clearly they had some trust in him once Kelly went down, but he just hasn't done anything with it. I wouldn't be shocked if we see, is it Malcolm Brown who's there? I know the Rams have
on the Rams. I don't know.
No, the Rams still have because the Rams still have like Mac Brown or something. I don't know. They both have an M Brown, but whichever one's on the Redskins here, he actually had made a couple nice plays in their last game before the bye week. So I wouldn't be shocked if he started taking some reps away.
I think this is going to be a good spot for Perine to prove that he can be something. If he fails to show up like Jake Cutler did last week, it will be might be a short-lived career. I have a lot of Samaje Perine shares in Dynasty, and I'm starting to regret that. Willie Snead didn't play week 4. Was still a little banged up coming off of the 3-game suspension. They had the week 5 bye. Sean Payton said his hamstring is good. He should be fine for week 6. At home versus Detroit, is Willie Snead a guy that will be in wide receiver 3 or flex consideration for you this week?
I'm really trying to avoid playing him. He's not at that level where I'm proactively, putting him in there because of his reputation or anything. I know he was a kind of a popular sleeper going into the season, but I'm gonna have to see it, from him first. There's a lot of guys on that offense, and while I think, aside from Thomas, he technically should be the next guy up in terms of targets, at least for the receivers.
It's not Kobe Fleener, I can tell you that.
Nope. But whatever. Fleener's still going to get a couple, and Ginn is there, and they throw to Brandon Coleman from time to time, and we see Kamara, getting a ton of targets now. So I need to see kind of his role in the offense before I put him in my lineup.
I think it's funny that he was getting pushed up so hard. He was in the 4th and 5th round in drafts, and then all of a sudden the suspension hits, and he drops round 7, round 8, and everybody's talking about what the value he could be, and now we're heading into week 6 and he still hasn't played a snap. That's crazy to me. Stephon Diggs, he's dealing with a groin injury, obviously was kind of limited a little bit against the Bears. He expects to play Sunday in a good matchup against Green Bay. Is he a guy that if he's out there, you're rolling out?
It's probably tough to have a good replacement for Diggs right now, but I saw a great graphic on Twitter, during the Monday night game that he's basically showing his splits in games during which he appeared on the injury report during that week, and he's just been awful at playing through injuries. He still guts it out and goes out there, but just the difference between when he in games where he's had a week of full practice in comparison to times he's missed practice or been limited has just been drastic, and he hasn't been anywhere close to start worthy in those weeks where he's dealing with an injury. So between that and kind of this quarterback shuffle they have going on here, I really wouldn't feel good playing Diggs. I think, like I said, in deeper leagues, it's going to be hard to get away from just because of how productive he was in the season. You probably weren't really too concerned with building wide receiver depth, and you just figured he would be an every week starter for you. So, maybe he can buck that trend, but I just think it's tough to feel good about him this week.
Yeah, it's definitely a good matchup though. So if he's out there, I'm gonna probably play him. But yeah, there's definitely reason for pessimism, and if he tweaks it wrong, and he could leave that game really early, and then you're sitting with a goose egg or very little in your wide receiver spots. I'm just gonna ask you about 3 quarterbacks, and you just tell me if you expect them to play. Matthew Stafford at New Orleans. He's dealing with some injury issues from last week. You think he's good to go for this Sunday?
Yeah, if I had to make a call on it right now, I think he's going to play.
What about Derek Carr? Obviously, he missed week 5. All indications have him playing this week. Jack Del Rio thinks he's going to play. He's been a little limited in practice today, but all signs point to him playing Sunday against the Chargers. Do you expect him to play?
Yeah, I think it was an encouraging sign, given how close he came last week when initially we thought this was going to be a much more serious injury, but it seemed like he was pretty close to getting in there last week. So I think another week off and he'll be good to go.
Yeah, I think the fact that he was already throwing last week was a definitely positive. And Marcus Mariota versus the Indianapolis Colts. A game is Monday night, so it's going to be a little bit of a tough decision for fantasy owners. But if he, all things are trending towards him starting. He was saying he felt good after practice today. If you're a Mariota owner, do you expect him to play on Sunday or Monday?
Are you back? I lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, you froze up. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you expect Mariota to play on Sunday or Monday?
Yeah, this is like the definition of a game time decision, and honestly, you have to assume he's not going to play because it's a Monday night game, and the only option you have is playing Castle or I guess
Jacoby
Brissett.
Brissett,
So
yeah, Brissett's in
right,
a really nice spot. So yeah, if you're in a league and you're comfortable playing Brissett, because I think this is a good matchup against a bad Titans defense. I wrote him up as one of my streamers this week. So if you can pick up Brissett, I think Mariota is a lot more appealing. Um, but yeah, I think I'm gonna lean. I think I'm leaning towards. I don't know. I don't. Matt Castle was so bad last week. I'm really hoping they push him to play, but we'll see.
yeah. Well, but the Brissett thing, I think it's one of those situations where if you're in a shallower league, like a 10 or 12 team league, and you're only playing, that's only playing one quarterback, and most people aren't carrying a backup, then there's going to probably be a few options better than Brissett available to you on Sunday. And
Hmm.
if you're in a 2 QB league or, like a 14 teamer, then chances are Brissett's probably owned. So you're kind of in a weird spot there, and I'd probably just play it safe and use a guy on Sunday if I had Mariota. Um, but again, that's just me.
Yeah, let me throw out a few names to you and see if you would use them over Mariota, even if it meant you could pick up um, Jacoby Brissett. So I'm pulling up quarterbacks now, all that are available. Let's see here. We'll go by ownership percentages based on Yahoo. So Derek Carr's available in 25% of leagues. Are you going to pick up Derek Carr and play him, assuming he's good to go?
Yeah, I'll take Carr.
What about Carson Palmer versus Tampa Bay? At home, it's a nice matchup. He's been over 300 yards. I mean, it's very ugly when he gets there. Another guy that I did recommend in my streamers, but would you play him instead of risking it with Mariota?
I would, yeah. It's just there's so much volume that he doesn't even have to be that great to put up points.
Yeah, but see, beyond there, like Eli Manning, there's no way you're using him in Denver. You,
No, no,
Jared Goff at Jacksonville, like you can't feel good about that. What
no.
about what about Trevor Siemian versus the Giants?
I might take Brissett there. I think the Giants' defense is still pretty strong in the secondary,
Yeah.
and I'm just concerned that with how bad the Giants' offense is probably going to look in this game, Denver might just do one of those like real low risk. Game plans where they're just pounding the ball, short throws. They don't want to risk a pick six or a big defensive play that's going to make it easier for the Giants to score because
Yeah.
I can't see how the Giants put together, a 12, 15 play drive to get a touchdown in this one.
Yeah, they're going to try and win it like 13-7 or 20-9 or something like that. It is a tough week though. I mean, we have Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott, Tyrod, and Andy Dalton all on bye. I mean, Cam Newton's out there, Jameis Winston's out there in some leagues, Kirk Cousins, Deshaun Watson. I mean, they're very few and far between. But if any of those guys are floating around, Matthew Stafford, and we'll let you talk about your quarterback start of the week as we. But first, let's talk about our friends over at Draft. I want to thank our friends Draft. Make sure you guys are using the Draft app each and every week, playing some DFS. It's a cool way to play some DFS. You do a draft instead of getting in with these sharks who have these algorithms and they know how to pick the best players and instead of a salary base. So only one person can have Le'Veon Bell, one person can have Tom Brady, one person can have Devonta Adams. So it's a unique slant. If you can download the app, you can go to playdraft.com. You can go into the Google Play Store, the iTunes Store, however you do it, and download at Draft. Use promo code FakePigskin. We'll give you a free year of Fake Pigskin Elite plus a $3 ticket if you just deposit $5. So you get $8 to play with, you get a year of Fake Pigskin Elite, and you get to have some fun. And you can read Damian's article each and every week on Fake Pigskin, giving you some tips on who you should be targeting each and every week in draft, and hopefully you can win some money. But Damian Dabrowski, talk to me about your quarterback start of the week, because this is another guy that if you're looking, if you're scrambling to not play Mariota, he might be out there in some leagues.
Yeah, as Peter Jennings likes to call him, Phyllis Rivers, fire him up this week. It's not pretty. You don't want to watch it, but at the end of the day, the numbers are there usually, and I think Oakland's secondary, it's not good.
No.
They've kind of the numbers haven't looked terrible these past couple of games just because Joe Flacco is just as bad, and we saw that from him last week.
Yeah.
But I think San Diego has enough weapons here. Rivers he's throwing a lot. They're not really able to. They haven't been able to kind of commit to Melvin Gordon, just because of how bad his efficiency has been.
Mm.
So it's tough to give you 25 carries when you're getting 2.5 yards a carry.
Yep.
So they've been forced to throw more. They, like I said, between the tight ends, they have a good group of receivers there. It's just because the Raiders obviously won't do this. They don't have a shutdown corner, but even when you take away, their main option or so, he can kind of spread it around. And I think the Raiders kind of have their backs against the wall. I think they're going to play well in this game in terms of being able to put up some points, assuming Carr is good to go. And if that happens, this could turn into a little bit of a shootout, back and forth, and a lot of points all around.
Yeah, no, I like that call quite a bit. I don't know who I'm going to feel more dirty about using on Sunday, Phillip Rivers or Carson Palmer. I don't want to watch either of those guys play quarterback, but by the end of the day, they'll have 300 and something yards and a couple touchdowns, and you'll be happy that you started them in fantasy. There's no lines out, so I'm really curious to see what that over-under is, assuming we get news on Derek Carr playing. I think that could be an interesting spot. My quarterback start of the week is Mr. Josh McCown. Do you feel great about using him? Probably not. But is he a great play this week? Absolutely. He's going up against those New England Patriots that I think I could go out there and throw for 300 yards against. They've allowed 300 yards in each and every start this season. They've allowed at least one touchdown in every game this season. Jameis is the only one that didn't reach multiple touchdowns. So there's a lot to like. The Jets are at home. They're going to be underdogs, so they're almost 10 points, 11 points, I think. The Jets are going to have to throw, and I mean, say what you will, but I think if you're looking for a quarterback streamer or you're looking for quarterback help this week, I like Josh McCown a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's. You're not wrong in what you said there. It's just it's tough to get kind of fully behind him when you consider that he's really mainly throwing to Jermaine Kearse and Robbie Anderson and Jeremy Curley, guys like that.
Yeah. I mean
I think in DFS where you get the benefit of basically not having to pay up for him. I think that's a good play, but in season long, I find it. I mean, I guess if it's a 2 QB league and you're playing him anyway, but I still can't find a way where I'd have him kind of in my top 18 even.
Yeah, I'm way more aggressive on that. I have him starting personally in I think at least 2 or 3 leagues.
But so do you have him like as a top 12 QB this week or?
I'd have to look. Probably. He may not be top 12, but he's right there with some of the studs out, with Eli not having any receivers and playing Denver. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens on Sunday. I mean, he can certainly do it. I think, the Patriots did look a lot better on Thursday. I think part of it was intentional in the sense that I think they just tried to control the ball and basically keep everything in front of them. And Jameis just didn't have patience to, keep taking 7-yard dump offs. And he just wasn't able to complete anything downfield. And I mean, I think McCown is a little bit like that too. He's a pretty aggressive guy who likes to take his shots. So, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, like I would start him over Jared Goff. I would start him. We'll probably get to him later, but I think I'd start him over Ben Roethlisberger at this point. I'd start him over him and Carson. Him and Carson Palmer are very close for me. And, I'd probably do Phil Rivers. I'd probably do Carson Palmer. I'd do Stafford. I mean, he's right there. He's like 12, 13, 14 for me, somewhere in that jumbled mess. And it really depends if Derek Carr doesn't play, if Mariota's not playing. He's right there. I like him. I like him a lot. Let's talk about our running back starts of the week, and I'll start with mine. And I'm going back to the well with this guy. Give me some Todd Gurley, baby. I know last week was not pretty. I think Sean McVay did some stuff. It got a little too cute. Jared Goff threw almost 50 times. Like that can't happen. And Jacksonville's secondary is proven to be really, really good. But if you want to get to them, if you want to beat them, the way to do it is on the ground. And you know, we saw the Browns run all over them. The Steelers didn't stay committed to it, so I think that was part of the problem last week. Um, Titans ran all over them, 138 yards. Baltimore ran for 123. The Rams on the road, I think they're going to have a conservative game plan. I think it's going to be a lot of Todd Gurley, and I think he's going to have a nice day. So in DFS and season long, I like Todd Gurley quite a bit.
I'm a little divided on this one. I think given that the Rams really weren't kind of had to get away from him. I guess not had to because it was a close game last week, but he just didn't really seem to get his normal allotment of touches, and it didn't really go great. So you're right. It might seem like they're going to try to kind of focus the game plan around him this week, but at the same time, I just think I know I guess the rushing stats on this Jacksonville defense aren't great. But at the same time, I just don't think the Rams. Goff has looked. He looked like he was really kind of struggling with some of those throws last week. Yeah. The Seattle's a legit defense, but so's Jacksonville here. I agree with you. They're not going to be able to throw the ball. I just think when you can't pass, it might be hard to kind of create a room for your ground game if the defense isn't really respecting your ability to throw the ball. So we'll see. But I also don't see Jacksonville really kind of running away with this game. So I do think Gurley will be involved throughout, and it might be one of those situations where perhaps. Again, it's kind of like the Melvin Gordon stat line where the efficiency might not be there, but he's going to get enough touches, especially if they get in the red zone, that he could still put up a pretty nice point total.
So Gurley's a guy in season long you're obviously going to, but for DFS purposes, you're going to look at other options.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. I just don't see the ceiling in this matchup for him to make me want to use him in DFS.
That's fair. Talk to me about your running back start of the week.
So I got Duke Johnson. I think it's not that I have him as like a top 15 guy or anything, but I think in PPR formats, it's been a couple weeks now that we've seen him, whether it's getting into the end zone late or just his involvement in the passing game with the injuries they've had to the receiving core, Kenny Britt being inactive, and even a couple short scores on the ground for him late in games. So,
yep.
We saw J.J. Watts out for the season. Merciless is out for the season. Yep. So just this defense is depleted, especially kind of in the linebacker position there. So I don't think they're going to have somebody really to cover him out of the backfield. And if we think that Houston's going to put up a lot of points here and they're going to be chasing, it's going to be a lot more Duke than it is Crowell. So could have a nice floor here.
Yeah, I like that call quite a bit. And guys, what we're trying to do here is give you guys that could be in flex consideration, potentially on your waiver wire. But people you're, do I start him or do I start him? And hopefully we can give you some ideas of some players that, if you're debating one of these names, hopefully we can help swing you one way or the other and you either get them in your lineup or make sure they stay on your bench. But yeah, I'm with you on Duke. I think that's a nice play. I kind of like the Browns overall. And I think there's going to be a little bit of fantasy potential to be had for sure. Let's talk wide receivers, and I'm going to talk about John Brown. Everyone was going to Jerron Brown a week ago, especially for DFS purposes. But John Brown was the guy. 80% of the snaps, second week having 7 targets back-to-back. Obviously found the end zone. He's in another nice spot. We talked about how we like Carson Palmer this week. John Brown running down the field. The Bucs have allowed the most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. They've almost 50 fantasy points a game to opposing wide receivers, so there's a lot to like there. I think Fitzgerald's in a nice spot. I still think Ellington's a good play, but John Brown, if you're considering him to flex, if he's still floating around your waiver wire, I think he's a guy you can pick up and throw right in your lineup this week.
Well, the only concern there, I think, is that they have so many. I have one league where the last 4 weeks, I'm pretty sure I spent like $12 on a different Cardinals receiver each time. It's like somebody dropped John Brown after week 1, picked him up, then he got hurt, dropped him, picked up J.J. Nelson. Then J.J. Nelson did nothing, so I picked up Jerron Brown because he had 12 targets, and I've blown a third of my budget and gotten like zero production from it because I'm always like one guy behind, 1 week behind, and
Yeah.
I don't know who it's going to be. I think all three of those guys, could have a big game where they could have 18 yards, and you factor in that Fitz is going to get his, and Andre Ellington's going to get his 6 catches, and maybe they'll run a little bit more with Peterson now. So it could be John Brown. I just have no reason to think it's more likely to be him than it is to be Nelson or Jerron Brown.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. But I love John Brown. I think he's been playing the most snaps. I think he's been getting a ton of work, and I expect him to do really well in this spot. Talk to me about your guy, because it's the guy I called out last week and found the end zone for your boy. So talk about him.
Yeah, five straight weeks with a touchdown for Chris Hogan, and I think this might have been on text, but you shot me that Eric Decker comparison for Chris Hogan, and I think that's spot on just in terms of the consistency of production. He's not a guy that's going to go off for 180 yards and a score like AJ Green, but he's also a guy that, with the exception of really the week one in Seattle, or not in Seattle, against Kansas City. He's getting you at worst 55, 60 yards a game and a touchdown.
Yeah.
If he doesn't score, he could still get you, 80 or 90 yards. It's not like he's kind of, stuck in that 40-yard ceiling the way, somebody like Dante Moncrief is, even when he scores most weeks. So I love it. I think, he's kind of that perfect intermediary between, the short little stuff that James White and Danny Amendola do, and then the over-the-top stuff that Brandon Cooks does. So he'll get some opportunities downfield, but he also does run a lot of kind of high percentage routes where, when they target him, he's going to be able to catch it and get you, 10, 12 yards. So I think he's one of the safest receivers out there. We know the Jets secondary is a mess right now. So I'd roll him out there. I think he's a high-end wide receiver too this week.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. And, the Eric Decker, people forget, but Decker last year was either 80 yards or a touchdown. It seemed like every single week. So Hogan just keeps finding the end zone. He's been super consistent. He plays a lot of spots, slot, outside, inside. They can find all kinds of ways to get him the ball. So I like that call. Let's talk a couple tight ends. I'm going to throw out two guys. One guy for shallower leagues, one guy for deeper leagues. Evan Ingram, we saw all the Giants receivers die last week. They all got their foots either snapped or ankles broken, or I'm not sure what the training staff does. They just avoid leg day, I guess, every day in New York. But Evan Ingram's going to get targets. I know he didn't have any last week, but Denver is a really good corner team which funnels all the targets in the middle of the field. I think Evan Ingram eats. I think he could find the end zone here. So if you can pick him up and play him, or if you have him on your team, I think he's a guy you got to play this week. And then in deeper leagues, George Kittle. The Niners are obviously going to be in a game where they have to kind of throw to keep up, and Kittle got a ton of targets last week. I think with Josh Norman on the outside, probably on Pierre Garçon a lot, Kittle could have targets funneled his way as well, and Brian Hoyer has been looking his way. So I think Kittle's another guy that, in deeper formats, if you need a tight end, is a good name to target.
Totally agree. I still don't understand how Ingram put up a bagel last week when literally all of their receivers were hurt. But like you said, they're going to have to throw to somebody, and it looks like he's going to be the main guy. So I'm definitely in on him. Staying in New York, I'm actually going to go with ASJ over on the Jets there. Used them all over, in DFS last week just because he was so cheap. And basically, if a team has a tight end and they're playing the Browns, you should play that tight end because he's going to score. And he did. He's not getting a lot of downfield stuff. I think it was only 5 catches for 29. But he is kind of their primary red zone weapon. And I think, in a game where the Jets are going to be trailing, they could take some more shots and perhaps he can, reel in some longer receptions. But, it feels weird to say, but he's probably a top 8 tight end this week with the guys that we have on bye.
Yeah, especially in PPR, I think he'll definitely get the volume, and then you just hope he finds the end zone. We have a little update on David Johnson. Bruce Arians was doing an interview with SiriusXM NFL, and he said the earliest expectation for David Johnson returning is Thanksgiving. So that kind of seems like it's in line with what the initial reports are is sometime they said around the holidays, so Thanksgiving or Christmas, and then Bruce Arians can just play it off as like, yeah, I told you guys around the holidays. So but yeah, I mean, if we can get if you can get a month and a half of David Johnson, I mean, I would be doing backflips. That could be a legit game changer once, assuming you can make the playoffs. Let's talk about the other side of the coin, Damian. Let's talk about the guys we are going to sit. And I kind of mentioned it earlier, but Ben Roethlisberger is absolute train wreck out there. He looks so bad. He's not moving the ball up and down the field. He's making, even when he's making like quality throws from the pocket, there's no one around him. He has all the time in the world. He's sailing the over 5 yards over his head. He obviously was a complete mess last week. At Kansas City, like R.I.P. Big Ben.
Yeah, no, you said it. He doesn't look good. Even last week, it was at home, and it was his worst game of the season.
Yeah.
So
yeah, road Ben versus home Ben has always been a thing, and now it's just terrible Ben.
Road Ben forgot they were at home and showed up to the wrong stadium apparently, but. Yeah, Arrowhead's one of the toughest places to play at. Antonio Brown will get his, but he's just not really getting production anywhere else, and the turnovers are climbing. So I'm definitely out on Roethlisberger here.
Yeah, I have one of my Yahoo teams, and I've started Andy Dalton in his 5 turnover game and Ben Roethlisberger in his 5 turnover game, and and I've somehow managed to win both those. So that's. But yeah,
wow.
And we get like negative point. We get -6 for a pick six. So I think they had a combined negative 24 points for me in their 2 games. But yeah. What are you still holding on to Ben? Like, do you think things are going to get better, or is he a guy that falls into the streamer category?
No, I mean they might get better, but I don't hold on to backup quarterbacks. Like I don't carry 2 QBs. Unless it's a league where there's just no QBs available on the waiver wire, and you got to have one in case your starter gets hurt or whatever. But in your standard league, there's no way I'm holding on to him. So I'm out. And for my guy here, I'm actually going to go with Jameis. And again, it's a little bit of a hedge, and I think really I think with a lot of this kind of sit start stuff we do, we're trying to pick guys, to sit that are generally, kind of top 12 or top 20 at their position. So, it's easy to pick guys that are kind of fringe starters to sit. So it's not necessarily, that we're saying you have to sit these guys, but I just think it means for DFS that they don't have a lot of upside. And we think there's a high likelihood that they could kind of disappoint, if you will. So that's kind of my case for Jameis. I think if I go down my rankings, he's probably still, 10th or 11th maybe this week, but
we're not starting Josh McCown, we're not starting Jacoby Brissett over him, but right. We want you to also enter in with reasonable expectations, and if you have somebody else that's if you are carrying 2 quarterbacks and you have 2 guys, or you could pick up Phillip Rivers off the waiver wire, which in one of my leagues I can do that. These are things you'll definitely want to think about. And I want to piggyback. Mike Evans. This should be an interesting spot for him. Obviously, Patrick Peterson's there, and if he follows him all day, like if you're a Mike Evans owner, obviously I think you have to play him, but do you kind of just have reasonable expectations?
Yeah. Again, I mean, this is one of those cases where you can't sit Mike Evans. But he's not going to go for 160 yards in Patrick Peterson. Yeah. He's just not. So the nice thing with him is he's just so big that he can, when they get into the red zone, he always has a pretty high probability of getting a few targets there. So that helps. It's kind of just the ceiling on his yardage there. But that's really all I can say about it, I guess.
Yep. No. And I totally get it. Let's talk running backs. I'm going to talk about Christian McCaffrey. This is just a guy that's not getting touches. Obviously found the end zone last week when you told everyone not to play him. So, what are we going to do? But, he's just not getting a lot of work. Ed Dixon Kelvin Benjamin, Devin Funchess all should have nice opportunities. And it's a Thursday night game, which always gets weird, which are always more low scoring than we expect. And I just, at this point, like, if you own them in a PPR leagues and your running backs are decimated, like, I get it. You'll probably have to play them, but I'm looking for other options if I can.
Yeah, I tweeted this out earlier today, but I was looking at McCaffrey's game log, and he's got 13 carries in his last 3 games combined, which, I mean, that's like third string running back volume, at least in the ground. And I don't, if that's what's going to happen, I mean, why did you draft this guy 4th overall?
Yeah.
You know, like, if you're just drafting him to be a receiver, then you should have drafted a receiver. You know, you could have drafted Corey Davis. It doesn't really make any sense, especially when the guy ahead of him is Jonathan Stewart. And McCaffrey's averaging barely 3 yards a carry in the season, but he's got 20 carries in a third of the season. So
well,
it's like,
if
how do you?
Stewart was ripping off long runs, or it was like even vintage Frank Gore, like, I would get it. Like, you're trying to work him in, but like, Jonathan Stewart's been atrocious.
Yeah, and he's like, if this is a team that's trying to win now, like, I mean, Stewart's not going to be a part of their future. I don't know, but it doesn't. I don't see it. I guess, you know, this switch flipping here all of a sudden. So I'd be worried, like you said, in full PPR. I guess you have to, because he's still getting you his 5-6 catches, and he's kind of a low end RB2 there. But even in half point PPR, I've kind of been using him there the past few weeks just because I haven't had better options, and it's been disappointing week after week.
Yeah. Like, would you start Elijah McGuire, who's going to be basically the feature back for the Jets against New England, or would you start Christian McCaffrey in a half point?
Absolutely McGuire. If both Powell and Forte are out, definitely McGuire.
And it looks like that will be the case. So there you go, people. That's kind of what we're thinking. Talk to me about your running back sit of the week.
So I got this one. This one hurts because I have a lot of Carlos Hyde kind of in my portfolio, if you will, this year. And, you know, up until this past week, things were looking great. And this was shaping up to be one of his better matchups. I mean, I know the Colts have kind of exceeded expectations in terms of the run defense, but we all thought that was kind of small sample variance, that they were going to come back to being kind of the funnel defense that we expected in terms of really struggling there. And he just, I don't know. I mean, it seemed like he got benched halfway through for Breida, and it's not even as if Breida was playing much better either. It's just we thought it might be the hip issue. That, you know, he was questionable all week, but from what Shanahan said, it's like the hip was fine. He was just going with the hot hand, which I guess we have different definitions of hot hand, because I didn't see anybody that was hot in that game.
I'm not buying that whatsoever. I think he was banged up. I think his hip was bothering him. And I just think he wasn't feeling good, and I think that's why they put Breida out there as much as they did, and they wanted to give.
But it's like, why would you lie about that? Like,
coaches lie to us all the time. They lie to us all the time.
Well, I don't have a problem with him lying if there's a purpose to it. Like, if you just want to lie about your game plan, or you want to lie about your usage because you don't want people to game plan it, but it's like, telling us you're benching the guy when in reality he was hurt and he couldn't perform. I mean, that's just like throwing him under the bus.
Yeah, but it's also like we were in the preseason when they were saying how he's just not picking up the offense, and they're going to cut him or trade him and let Joe Williams be the feature back, and this, that, and the other. I don't know.
But the difference between that is, I think all that preseason stuff, I don't think that was coming from Shanahan directly. I think people were it was a lot of beat reporters and a lot of guys around the situation just interpreting, oh, they drafted Joe Williams. Oh, Shanahan, they paid, Kyle Juszczyk. It's like basically kind of taking these other moves and assuming they must be indicative of how they feel about Hyde, which, maybe that was the case, but to have him, come out and say it himself. So I don't know. I hope that's not the case. I hope he was banged up and that's why he didn't get the touches, but I just can't see a scenario where I feel great starting him this week, knowing that there's essentially 2 ways for him to have a poor game. If he is still injured and he aggravates that and he just doesn't get the workload, or if it really is some bizarre, rotational thing where, I guess in Shanahan's eyes, Breida plays better, and then, Hyde gets 7 carries. So
yeah,
it's tough because there's some good running backs on bye, but I just, if you have to play him, you have to play him. But
yeah,
it just, you don't feel good about it.
I'm playing him if I can. They allowed 103 yards last week to KC, 88 yards to the Rams, only 52 to the Eagles, but the Eagles aren't running the ball well, and that was a Darren Sproles game, so they still got 23 points out of their running back. The only game that they did really well was the Oakland game, but we saw that game. It was a complete mess. So I'm a little more optimistic on Hyde, but there's definitely reasons for concern. I mean, the Breida stuff was legit, and if you're a Carlos Hyde owner, are you picking up Matt Breida if he's still around?
It depends on kind of the depth of your league. I actually really haven't picked up Breida in any of the leagues I own Hyde, just because I can't see a situation where, unless Hyde has like a significant injury, where Breida gets enough touches a week for me to feel comfortable starting him. Yeah. And if that doesn't happen, then I'm just wasting 2 roster spots on guys that I don't feel comfortable starting either one. And at that point, it's just I'd rather have neither than both from a roster construction standpoint.
What about Marlon Mack? Are you picking him up?
Yeah, I think if you're a Frank Gore owner, perhaps, but I don't know if the Colts are going to really commit to him. I think, he'll still get his, 8 to 10 touches maybe, but chances are he's not going to be able to break that 30-yard run that he has, the last 2 or 3 games. And if he doesn't, and, he goes 9 for 33, then it doesn't really help you.
Yeah, they both feel like Donta Foreman guys to me, like guys we get excited about, guys that, their starter has been struggling and this, that, and the other, and then, the next 3 weeks, the starter is getting 90% of the touches, and we're end up cutting him for something else. So, I don't know. I'm cautiously optimistic. I'd pick up Jerick McKinnon and Elijah McGuire over both of them.
Yeah, for sure. But I think these are like the they're the ideal guys to pick up, and ideally you want to do this like you would have wanted to do this last week or 2 weeks ago. But guys like Mack and Breida are basically, if you have an empty roster spot, you don't necessarily, not as a handcuff, just pick them up, because if the starter does get hurt, those guys would instantly become RB2s. Whereas, if you actually need to play a guy, then you're better off playing, Jonathan Stewart or LeGarrette Blount or, Rob Kelly, just guys that, are going to get you a guaranteed 40 yards each, every week. So that's kind of the difference there.
Yeah, that's what we talked about last week. Always look for these running backs that you can just stash at the end of your bench and kind of get ahead of the waiver wire. Because if they pop, they're going to be big names on the waiver wire. And, even if you don't want to use them, you can trade them away for a lot more than whatever you end up dropping to pick them up. So just Friday night, Saturday morning, it's a great time to comb the waiver wire, look for a backup running back that could become the starter, and kind of go from there. Let's hit some receivers. We'll hit some tight ends, and then we can get out of here, Damian. I'm avoiding the Dolphins this week, and obviously Jay Cutler has been an absolute dumpster fire. We gave him 3 weeks. We gave him 3 great matchups. We kept riding him. Even when I was off, you got me. You pulled me right back in, and we were on the Jay Cutler Express. Turns out he dropped us off in Poop Town. This week he's on the road. He's on the road to face the Falcons in the Georgia Dome. Falcons are coming off the bye. Like, Devontae Parker left last week's game with an ankle injury. Jarvis Landry, it's been inconsistent. He's just not targeting him. Like, he's getting the targets. They're just not within range where he could actually catch it. So, I'm avoiding the Dolphins offense as much as I can until things get better.
The dump of the week has evolved into the Poop Town Express. So a little more speed with your delivery here.
Yeah, when you need to carry more than just one player, you have to open up the Poop Town Express and just load up the whole team and drop them off.
Oh man, there's so much pizza. So much pizza.
Welcome to the Angle of Pursuit, home for fantasy football and feces.
I'm sure there's a high crossover in demographic between
100%. There's at least two or three listeners that are just like loving life right about now.
All right, I gotta refocus here.
Regroup.
Yeah, no. Look, I think with you add in the ankle injury for Parker, I don't know if it's ever going to come together with any type of consistency. And the annoying thing for Landry is that I got a lot of shares of him too, just because with like the domestic violence thing, he kind of started dropping, from being kind of a fifth round guy to like a seventh round guy. And at that point, I was like,
Yeah.
he's still gonna get, 8, 9 targets a game. He's gotten even more than that, but it's just like, I guess it doesn't matter who the QB is. Like he's still only running like 4 yard routes. So it's like it's crazy to see him get 13 targets and like 35 yards. But it's the same as if you might as well just make him a running back. I mean, he'll probably average the same yards per carry as he does yards per catch. So you kind of need him to score because it doesn't seem like he's getting those kind of 9, 10, 11 catch games that we had seen, really with the exception of maybe the game against the Chargers. And if he just goes, 6 for 35, 6 for 40, it's just he's really got to score to make it worthwhile, because he's just not doing anything down the field. So, no, I'm totally with you. I think just bench all your Dolphins, which is a weird thing to say in a game that we expect a lot of.
Even Jay Ajayi, now that their offensive line might be heading now that they have a coach that's focusing on the right version of the line.
um, I mean, again, it's like it's hard to have a team where you have a lot of options better than Jay Ajayi, but he's just not producing because this offense is stuck in the mud. They're not moving the ball. They're going 3 and out. They're falling behind, and then they can't run. So it's just, I find it hard to imagine that this is the week it changes. So again, like, going into the week, yeah, I don't want to bench Jay Ajayi, but if I had to project them, I'd say, he goes 17 for 62 and probably doesn't score. So, if he does that, is it really, that great? So
yeah,
no,
25 for 55.
I'm with you. Yeah, no, exactly. It's just I can't see this being, that eruption spot for him, if you will. And kind of sticking with the receivers here, kind of the guy that I'm veering away from, again, maybe more so DFS than season long, but Demaryius Thomas. I think, again, we mentioned it earlier when talking about QBs that the Broncos might have a conservative game plan here, and just they're not going to air it out. They're going to try to avoid mistakes. And if Thomas gets Jenkins on him, he's been shut down this year, and Simeon's probably just going to go more towards Sanders and probably the tight end with the struggles the Giants have had there. So just not a lot of upside for Thomas in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm probably with you. Although I do like Thomas as a buy low opportunity. I think, especially if he kind of struggles here, he's a guy I'm going to go try and trade for because I think the touchdowns are coming. I think everything will be better. I think playing at home helps a little bit, but yeah, this Giants secondary is for real. I'm just really curious to see if they get in a little quit to him because, with the offense being so inept without any of the receivers, and say Eli throws a couple picks, if the defense gets a little lackadaisical, and then all of a sudden, they're not playing quite up to their standards. But I mean, I do see where you're coming from for sure. Let's hit a couple. Martellus Bennett is, I don't know. Like, I wanted to be excited about him. I wanted to say that Aaron Rodgers will, find him in unique circumstances, but between all the weapons they have, and now they're going to have another potential pass catcher, and, the Vikings defense is really good. Like, I can't start Martellus Bennett. 3 catches, 5 catches, 3, 6, 3, and then 47. I mean, he's topped 50 yards once, and that was against Dallas. Like, I'm going to have a real hard time. I know tight end's a mess, and maybe in PPR, you get 3, 4, 5 catches a week. Like, but, you could easily get it like he did against Cincinnati where he goes 3 for 12, and that's it. So, I'm avoiding Martellus Bennett if I can. Like, I'm playing ASJ, I'm playing George Kittle, I'm playing Evan Ingram all over him.
Yeah, there's just too, like you said, there's too many other options, too many receivers they like to throw to. And then you throw in the fact that there's still Lance Kendricks and Richard Rodgers there, which they're not necessarily taking a lot of snaps away from him, but they still get that random touchdown. And maybe if you combined all of their tight end production into one guy, then he'd be a little bit higher. But it's just too many question marks. And I'm gonna go with a guy who's actually been really, really good lately. So it's kind of a little, going out on a limb here, but I'm going to go with Cameron Brate, just because he's been He hasn't been entirely touchdown dependent. He's been getting 50, 60 yards in some of these games, scored against last week. But Arizona, really over the last season and a half, have just been terrific against tight ends. Um, they gave up the Zach Ertz touchdown last week, but I think he only had like 38 yards or so. They hadn't had allowed a tight end to top, 53 receiving yards, I think,
Hmm.
against them all of last season. And I don't know, I don't think anybody's exploded against them this year either. So just they between Tyrann Mathieu and the guys just they have in that secondary, it's a position that they
I
cover pretty
mean,
well. Yeah.
Ertz was really good against them. 9 for 82 and 2 touchdowns. And
Wait,
then
Ertz was
wait, no, well,
not no not last week.
well, it says Philly had nine cut by their tight end. They had nine. Oh, Trey Burton caught him, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
but
yeah.
they
Burton
allowed
had
they
the-
allowed 9 for 82 and 2 touchdowns last week. They allowed 99 yards to the Colts, but outside of that, it was 9 yards to Detroit, 3 yards to Dallas, and 35 yards to the Niners. So their defense has been really good in most
Right.
matchups, especially when they're at home.
Yeah, I mean, maybe OJ Howard gets scores a touchdown here, but you don't get the position. You only get
Right.
the one player. So I guess you can hope that if Winston kind of wants to shy away from Peterson, maybe Bray gets more targets. But at the
Yeah.
same time, I think that he's been a guy that's willing to force it in there. And if anything, this can be a huge Deshaun Jackson game, just because the outside of Peterson, I don't know if it's. I think Bethel's their number 2 corner. He's been a disaster. Torrey Smith roasted him for a huge touchdown last week. Nelson Aguilar did the same thing. So could really be an eruption spot for Deshaun Jackson here.
Yeah, I mean the last 3 weeks, receivers against the Cardinals 9 for 166, 13 for 153, and 11 for 200 yards. So, and 4 touchdowns over that span. So yeah, I could definitely see the extra receivers being really good. Maybe it's Adam Humphries' game, and then not so much Cameron Brate, not so much Mike Evans. Although the way Jameis, he'll throw like he was thrown into triple coverage against the Pats. So if he has to, he has to. But I think you're right. This could be a cool spot for OJ Howard. So maybe if you're playing DFS and you're wanting to save a little money, that could be an interesting way to go. All right, Damian, this is a lot of fun. We hit through a lot of stuff. At FPAOP on Twitter. Send us any start-sit questions you have, any trade questions you have. I know right now is a great time to start making some serious deals because you gotta put your team in a place to make the playoffs, and then once you get there, you can figure it all out. But now is the time to jump on those guys. If you see those guys going to the bye week, now is the time to buy low. I mean, if you want to buy at the lowest point, that's usually how it works. So try and do that. For Damian Dabrowski, I'm Kyle Robert, and we'll talk.